Hi, everyone, and welcome to our second segment, What is a Story? In this video, you will learn about the basic building blocks of stories and how to structure those stories. Because there really is only one way to do it. We've been perfecting this story structure since the dawn of time. Back in our caveman days, we needed to remember information that would allow us to survive in this dangerous world. How do we avoid the saber-toothed tiger attack that happened on the animal trail last week? How do we find and hunt for food? How do we keep our children alive? To make that information captivating and memorable, human beings perfected a single story structure. This is universal. So we're going to take a look at 3 basic building blocks of stories and 3 essential qualities of those stories before we get into the structure. Let's start with our building blocks. The first one we need is a hero. Now, in this picture, it kind of looks like our hero is going to turn into Superman and be able to fly down from the sky and save the day. I think a lot of businesses think they are this type of hero in their communications and presentations. But that's not really the hero I'm talking about. Think more of Luke Skywalker, Katniss Everdeen, Frodo Baggins, an everyday person who becomes the central character of that story. Now, to get the story moving, that hero needs a goal, something they are pursuing, something they are trying to achieve, something that gets the fellowship together and gets them on the road to getting this goal done. But is that a story? 2 building blocks, hero and goal, sounds good to me, but let's take another look at this. What if you were sitting in the movie theater and you met a furry-toed hobbit named Frodo who loves his second breakfast and smoking his pipe and hanging out in the Shire, and all of a sudden Frodo is asked to go and destroy this evil ring in a pit of fire. Oh, this is getting exciting, but the next 10 minutes is just Frodo walking along by himself. The path is clear, the ground is flat, the sky is sunny, and all of a sudden he arrives at a pit of fire, tosses the ring in, brushes his furry little hands off and says, okay, back to the Shire, just in time for second breakfast. Well, that's not a great story. I don't think you enjoyed that movie because we were missing the most essential building block of story, and that is conflict. Conflict is made up of the challenges that Frodo is going to face along the way. It's the overarching struggle between 2 forces that Frodo has to resolve in order to achieve his goal. And conflict will become the electrical current through your business story. In the iPhone presentation, Steve Jobs made us the hero of that story. The hero was anybody who uses a phone. What was our goal? We wanted a phone that was smart and easy to use at the same time. What was the conflict? Well, the problem was every time the phone got smarter, it got harder to use. Anytime it got easier to use, the phone wasn't so smart. That was the overarching conflict the iPhone presentation resolved so the hero, the audience, could meet their goal. For your business presentations or your communications or conversations, the first step for you is to sit down and think about, who is my hero? It's probably going to be your audience. And what is their goal? And what conflict stands in their way that I'm going to help them with today? Talk about a captivating message. The next thing we need to think about are the 3 essential qualities of well-told stories. The first is they have to be emotional. It is a fact that human beings cannot make decisions or act without emotion. If we don't feel anything, we don't do anything. So how do you communicate that emotion to your audience? Well, there are 3 ways that we communicate feelings and attitudes. First of all, the words that we use. But that's not really enough. I can't stand here and say, I'm really excited to be here. You're not going to believe me. We need something else. We need tone of voice. I'm really excited to be here. Okay, getting better, but not quite there because there's a third one that we need, and this is the most important one of all. It's body language. I am really excited to be here today. Now you believe the message. So when you are practicing your stories, remember, emotion is going to come from you, the communicator, through words, tone of voice, and body language. The second essential quality is that your words need to be specific. Ask yourself, would a 13-year-old kid understand my message right now? I think in the last video you encountered a presentation where the answer would have been a definitive no. But Steve Jobs, he used everyday language. He talked in specific ways that fired up our mental pictures. I could easily sit a 13-year-old through that presentation and they would understand every word of it. New York University studied this. They asked the question, does vague language and corporate jargon help the audience to trust, or does it actually destroy their trust? And they found there is a direct correlation. The more jargon, the more vague language you use, the audience trust starts to plummet. And it's a sliding scale. It keeps going down the more you use that jargon. The best way for you to practice is practice with somebody who doesn't know a lot about your field and make sure they can understand you. That language needs to be specific, and we are going to practice that in our coaching and live sessions. The last quality is be brief. Just tell them what they need to know and don't tell them any more. And that is going to vary depending on your audience. With some, you'll need to go into more detail on the technical information or the amount of data, evidence, but with other audiences, you may not need that level of detail. If we stick to our structure and we only allow the information in that supports that story, we will achieve this. So those are our basic building blocks and essential qualities of well-told stories. All of this is going to be put together in a structure that we have known, again, since the dawn of time. Now, this structure was first drawn in the late 1800s by a German playwright named Gustav Freytag. This is a simplified version of Freytag's pyramid, but it's one I think you've seen before. Maybe not since grade school, but you've seen it. So a well-told story essentially starts with a setting, what's known in classic terms as exposition. This is where we figure out that Frodo is our central character. He lives in the Shire. He eats second breakfast. We get a bit of the lay of the land for our story. But there's an inciting incident that sets our hero off on the journey, and that takes us into the second part of our story structure, which is the challenge, the rising action in classic terms. And this is actually where we spend most of our time in a well-told story. In the last video, I told you the brain gets a hit of cortisol during a well-told story. Well, this is where it happens. When we start hearing about and seeing those challenges, the conflict, that's when we start to care about the outcome. We pay attention and we get a little bit of a distress response. Eventually, the story reaches its climax and we can feel that the tension is going to be resolved. And that's where we get our hit of oxytocin as soon as the challenge is solved. In our structure, we're calling this the solution stage of our story structure. This is where we understand now what is going to solve this challenge. Quickly after that, the story pretty much comes to an end. We get a little bit of falling action, resolution. We're just going to call it outcome. And this is where we tie all those ends together and paint a picture of the ending of our story. That simple structure is what we've known since the dawn of time, and it's how we are going to start organizing our business and technical information so that we captivate our audience, they can follow along and get a lot of clarity around our message, and they remember it long after we're done. I want to show this to you in action. We'll go back to the iPhone presentation, but this time I'm going to break it down into the pieces of this simple story structure. We're going to watch Steve Jobs deliver that user interface portion. He's going to go through a setting, the challenge, the solution, and the outcome. Just so you can see this in action. Let's take a look.
Now, we're going to start with a revolutionary user interface. It is the result of years of research and development, and of course, it's an interplay of hardware and software. Now, why do we need a revolutionary user interface? I mean, here's 4 smartphones, right? Motorola Q, the BlackBerry, Palm Treo, Nokia E62, the usual suspects. And what's wrong with their user interfaces? Well, the problem with them is really sort of in the bottom 40 there. It's this stuff right here. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. And they all have these control buttons that are fixed in plastic and are the same for every application. Well, every application wants a slightly different user interface, a slightly optimized set of buttons just for it. And what happens if you think of a great idea 6 months from now? You can't run around and add a button to these things. They're already shipped. So what do? It doesn't work because the buttons and the controls can't change. They can't change for each application, and they can't change down the road if you think of another great idea you want to add to this product. Well, how do you solve this? It turns out we have solved it. We solved it in computers 20 years ago. We solved it with a bitmap screen that could display anything we want, put any user interface up, and a pointing device. We solved it with the mouse, right? We solved this problem. So how are we going to take this to a mobile device? Well, what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen. Now, how are we going to communicate this? We don't want to carry around a mouse, right? So what are we going to do? Oh, a stylus, right? We're going to use a stylus. No. No. Who wants a stylus? You have to get them and put them away and you lose them. Yuck. Nobody wants a stylus. So let's not use a stylus. We're going to use the best pointing device in the world. We're going to use a pointing device that we're all born with. We're born with 10 of them. We're going to use our fingers. We're going to touch this with our fingers. And we have invented a new technology called multi-touch, which is phenomenal. It works like magic. You don't need a stylus. It's far more accurate than any touch display that's ever been shipped. It ignores unintended touches. It's super smart. You can do multi-finger gestures on it. And boy, have we patented it.
Okay, see that story structure at work? What Steve Jobs did in that short segment was he told you a mini story about user interfaces, keyboards, and multi-touch. What he does is he fires up your imagination. You start to imagine the possibilities with this magical, smart, and easy-to-use phone. This is very smart if Steve Jobs wants us to act or make a decision with him at the end of this presentation. Firing up the imagination is really what it's all about. I love this quote from Noel Tishy and the Leadership Engine. When we ask people to make a decision with us, to decide on our idea, our change, adopt our product or service, we are essentially asking them to take a step into the unknown. They are Frodo Baggins starting on that adventure. The best way to encourage them to take that step is to first have them take that step in their imaginations. If they can imagine the possibilities, they are more likely to act. And how do we fire up the imagination? It's everything we've been talking about in these videos. Tell them a story. Okay, I'm at the last example of how well this actually works. I love this story. So everybody knows Gillette razors. They sell a lot of razors. But you know how you buy them. They're always locked in those plastic cabinets. They're really expensive. They're hard to get at. And Gillette enjoyed this situation because it made them a lot of money. They're like the #1 razor blade company out there. Well, the way they advertised their product was a lot of what? They would talk about a lot of the shave technology. They also hired big-time celebrities like Roger Federer and Tiger Woods to strut around flashy studios in their commercials to advertise their product. They focused a lot on the what, and they ignored that experience in the store of just trying to buy razors. Well, a guy named Michael Dubin was walking down the street in New York City one night, and he realized he had a party to go to, and he didn't have a razor at home. The way Dubin tells the story, he was standing in front of the drugstore feeling completely exhausted just at the thought of having to go in there and buy razor blades. Why? Because of all the reasons I talked about. They're locked up in plastic cages. If the pharmacist wasn't there, he wasn't going to get into them anyway. And even if he did get his razors, then he'd have to fork out all this money for them. Dubin realized in that moment that the problem with razor blades wasn't the shave technology, it was the experience. The whole experience was broken. That night at his party, he suggested to his buddy that they start a business. And they did, but they didn't have a lot of money. So I'm going to show you the first commercial video that they launched on YouTube. And it is very different from what Gillette was doing. Remember, Gillette was telling its customers what they produced, what the razor blade did. And they spent a lot of money on Tiger Woods and Roger Federer strutting around those studios to do the celebrity endorsements. Dubin and his pal, they didn't have that kind of money. They had about $4,000 and a warehouse to work in. And this is what they produced. So we're going to watch the video, and then after we're done, I will tell you what impact that video had on the customers Michael Dubin and his partner were going after. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis.
And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop-up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
Wasn't that a lot of fun? Dollar Shave Club wasn't just fun, it was also effective. So what happened? Michael Dubin and his partner posted that video to YouTube at 6 a.m. on March 16th, 2012. 90 minutes later, their website crashed. By the time they got it up and running the next morning, they had 12,000 subscribers. Over the next few weeks, 3 million people tuned in to watch the Dollar Shave Club video on YouTube. 5 months later, July 2016, Dollar Shave Club sold to Unilever for $1 billion. They are the first company to take market share from Gillette. Over the next 8 years, Gillette slowly started to lose share from 70% to 54%. All of that because of a 90-second story told on YouTube. If you are looking for clarity with your messages, use the structure we have known from the dawn of time. Use your building blocks: hero, goal, conflict. Pump that story full of emotion. Be specific with your language, but keep it brief. And use the structure that we've been using for a long time to help humans to understand and remember the information that we feel is the most important in our lives. In the next section of your course, you will start to play with story. You're going to take your business information, your technical information, and you are going to create captivating messages using the structure we have known since the dawn of time. I'll see you in the next video.